Hi, this is Dave Pryor for Projects at Work. I'm here at Agile 2014, and today I'm sitting with Troy McGinnis, who is here at the conference to give a presentation about some of the lessons from Moneyball, the book about the Oakland A's and how they were able to take some statistical tools and apply them to figuring out how to be, well, theoretically a high-performing team with a lower budget.
Compete above their budget.
There you go. Um, and can you give kind of a quick overview, and then I'd like to talk about some of the more controversial stuff you're
Sure,
introducing.
sure. Yeah, essentially, the Oakland A's are the highest performing team in there for the amount of money they spend, and they're actually competing with teams with 3 or 4 times the budget that they have. And they were constrained by budget, so they had to be smarter about how they worked.
Right.
And the session is about some of the tools and techniques and thought process they used to do that, and how we might apply it to software and
Cool.
projects.
So if you're just for those who might not be familiar with the question that people are trying to answer now, if you look at project work at a program and portfolio level especially, it's understanding what value is, understanding what tools can be applied to figure out what's most important, what you should work on now, and also in your case, how to prepare the team structure and everything for the future, right?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, you've got the resources and you know what you're going to do next month, but you've got to apply some thought to what you're going to do next quarter and next year to make sure that your growth potential and you can actually implement the new ideas that are on your backlog. Maybe there's a new technology. HTML5 was a big one, CSS, JavaScript. You had all back-end coders, but
Right.
you needed to slowly progress them and send them to art school. There's a lot of these things don't just happen, and someone needs to plan them out. And I think
Right.
it's part of the process of optimizing your business.
Okay. And so you're going to introduce tools that people can take away from the session and things like that.
Yeah, I mean they're very very simple sort of tools and processes of statistics that we use that give very fast benefit.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, you could spend another couple of months doing more estimates, but you would be 95% certain within the first day about what an outcome's going to be. So
Okay.
it's highlighting the processes that you can make informed decisions with much less data than we do today.
Okay. Now, are you focusing on the cost of delay? Because there does seem to be a fair number of people kind of going in that direction.
Sure, and cost of delay is the blend of how long it's going to take to do and how much I'm going to get back from it.
Right.
So it is probably the metric that we can adjudicate and start judging project A versus project B or feature A versus feature B as to return. Um, but to get there, you do have to have some sense of duration. You do have to
Hmm.
have some sense of how much value it's going to make when it's on the market. So it's the last step. It's the division
Okay.
operator at the end. It's not the process to get there,
Okay.
but it is the perfect metric for comparing outcomes and planning.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that some of the stuff you're going to be talking about is a little more on the controversial side.
Sure, yeah. I guess in the early days, part of requiring less data or less work to generate the estimates is by understanding the process that goes into writing software, and that tells us how much variability and what distribution curve we'll likely see, how long different bits of work will take. Uh, and I've done some analysis of the range of curves we see in different styles of projects, whether they're Scrum or Agile, or whether they're more on the Lean and the
Hmm.
Kanban side, and think that I'm going to present here for the first time that we can give pretty clear process guidance, and there is very clear indicators in the market about where people have naturally fallen.
Hmm.
They've adopted Scrum when they're in a certain distribution curve set,
Sure.
and they've adopted Kanban when they're in a certain distribution curve set. And we can use that knowledge now to know what our next step should be and what
Okay.
processes will actually, individual ideas that we have to make process changes, which ones will move us in a direction we can possibly go, and where we're going to hit a natural limit.
So they can use math to figure out whether they should be sticking with Scrum or switching to
Well,
Kanban or vice
in
versa.
true form, we just do things in a nice little sort of 3 by 3 grid and sort of say, you are here and you need to get to here. And some
Right.
ideas to make that move are reducing external dependencies, reducing external impediments. At the main end and the big scaling companies, you have each team can't deliver by itself. It relies a lot
Right.
on other teams to deliver, which means that a lot of the time there's delays. So of course their cycle times are longer
Hmm.
on average. And then you've got if we look at the other extreme, more of the DevOps style teams where the person that gets the work can do the work.
Yeah.
They're very rarely constrained externally, and they've naturally sort of gravitated towards the lean and the Kanban style So I wanted to understand why that was and
Okay.
what were the processes which drove that eventual outcome, and I got some results to show.
Cool. Now, on the side of the larger scale companies, right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of organizations that are in some state of transformation. They're trying to adopt Agile, but they still have this sort of waterfall hangover that won't go away.
Hmm.
How much does having like an Agile approach and a waterfall approach in the same organization complicate your ability to understand what you should do next
Yeah,
or how you
I'm
should do
at
it?
an agile conference, so I don't want to be shot here. I think the difference
You're
is,
safe here. This is a
yeah.
safe waterfall space.
So if I fell back onto mathematics here, it all comes down to the right economic batch size.
Okay.
Now, waterfall was everything had to be done before we sent the truck off to the customer.
Right.
That's probably not a wise choice in today's
Hmm.
marketplace. You need to get those trucks to the customer earlier, or they'll go and buy somewhere else. And then you've got the upper extreme, which would be the lean manufacturing style that you have a whip limit of one, and you only ever pick one thing up, you do it, and you deliver it.
Yeah.
Now, that may not work for all contexts
Hmm.
and situations. So, I mean, the rule is, and if you study Don Reinerson's work on the principles of product development flow, you'll see there is an economic batch size equation, and it's a U curve.
Okay.
So the important thing is to not be at either extreme.
Right.
So if you halve what you're currently doing, you're going to be better off than you were.
Okay.
So the idea is you would halve your batch size. So if you were doing a release every 6 months, do a release, try doing a release every 3 months, even if it was internally,
Okay.
even if you were waterfall.
Sure.
And if you can pull it off, if you can get all of your release activities like localization and political correctness sort of testing done in that
Sure.
period of time, then halve it again.
Okay. So it's sort of like incremental progress towards a
Yeah.
smaller size.
So I see companies which have a blend of waterfall and much shorter sprint duration release cycles being on that, making the move on the continuum is what I'm first looking for as a
Okay.
coach. Is, are you trying to get smaller?
Right.
And if they can't, if they're hitting some bottleneck, we fix that first.
Right.
I think ideally they would want to be on shorter sprints than being on the full waterfall.
Okay.
I just think there's something internally, some external process that's blocking them from doing it.
Cool.
So that's what I think our distribution curve shows, is
All right.
that sometimes there's so much hangover and wrap up activity, stabilization phases,
Yeah.
that it's painful
Yeah.
for these companies to make that first move. Until we solve those, we can't get them,
Cool.
at least on the treadmill.
All right. So one thing I just want to mention before we wrap up, I do speak to a lot of people who are trying to figure out how to get the ammunition to talk to executives and say, this is why we should make these changes. The tools that you have, being based in mathematics and tools that they may already be familiar with, that
Yeah.
should help open that door, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the tools I'm using are your CFO is already using.
Okay.
They already understand these terms, and for an instance, most of the work I do, I go and put a dollar value on a 10% reduction in cycle time,
Okay.
and that turns out to be a large enough number that
They're like, oh, okay.
let's pursue that, right?
Sure.
Let's pursue that. So until you start phrasing the reasons we implement Agile in dollar financial terms,
It's hard for them to say yes.
it's hard for them to say yes,
Yeah.
because they don't know what a story point's worth. They want to know all they know is that IT takes 80% of
Forever.
the budget.
Yeah.
Takes forever to deliver anything.
To deliver the wrong thing.
Yeah, to deliver
Right.
something that customers don't want.
Yeah.
So they just want a solution to that. Yeah, you got to speak to them in their language.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much for coming by. So I'm gonna, if it's okay, post a link to your paper. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So that'll be in the notes from this podcast, and please keep checking back, as I'll be posting new interviews all week long. Thanks.